The smell of reheated steak and privilege filled the cabin long before the insult landed. "You people always want something for free," the flight attendant said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the first-class hush. Every head turned, then quickly looked away. Seat 2B, Marcus Reed, sat perfectly still, his fingers resting on the armrest, his eyes unmoved. The meal cart rolled past him without a glance, the silver trays gleaming beneath soft cabin light. He had paid for this seat, for this meal, for this silence that now pressed against his chest like gravity. The woman's words hung in the air, almost proud of themselves. Marcus breathed in slowly, memorizing the sound of humiliation, the smell of entitlement at 30,000 feet. It wasn't new, but this time, it was different. He wasn't here by accident. He was here on purpose. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The flight attendant, Nicole, moved past him again, leaning slightly toward an older couple in 2A. Her smile returned, all honey and professionalism. "Champagne for you, sir?" she asked, voice smooth as silk. The man nodded. Marcus watched the bubbles rise in their glasses, tiny orbs of privilege floating upward, never falling. Nicole didn't look at him again, not even when he quietly said, "Excuse me, I believe my meal was skipped." She paused, glanced down, then gave a smile that wasn't a smile. "Oh, we're out of that option. Maybe next time, sir." Her tone dripped with something unspoken, but heavy enough for everyone nearby to feel. Marcus didn't argue. He'd seen this play before, same script, different actors. A man 2 rows back chuckled under his breath. Guess someone snuck into first class. Laughter followed, small but sharp. The cabin filled with the quiet hum of injustice that pretends to be normal. Marcus looked out the window. The clouds outside were endless, soft, white, untouchable. Inside, the air was hard, brittle, thin. He reached for his water and noticed his reflection in the glass. Calm, controlled, the kind of calm that made people underestimate him. Nicole whispered something to her colleague. Both laughed softly. He caught fragments. Fake upgrade, must have used miles. He let it pass. For now. The pilot's voice crackled over the speaker. "We'll be landing in Los Angeles in about an hour." Marcus's eyes didn't move. He wasn't thinking about the landing. He was thinking about the test. Horizon Air. His company. His staff. His standards. This flight wasn't just another trip. It was an audit in disguise. A social experiment wearing a seatbelt. And Nicole had just failed in record time. Across the aisle, a young trainee, badge-reading Jenna, shifted uncomfortably. She'd seen the passenger manifest. She knew exactly who he was. But fear is a heavy thing at 30,000 feet. She looked at him once, just once, and he nodded, as if to say, "It's all right. Not yet. Let them keep digging." The intercom pinged again, a request for service. Nicole glided by with practiced grace, pretending not to see him. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying. "You skipped me. Twice." Nicole stopped, turned, her expression still painted in customer service neutrality. "Sir, we prioritize premium passengers first." The irony nearly made him laugh. He leaned back, eyes steady. "You might want to check your definition of premium." For a second, just a second, the performance cracked. Her jaw tightened. Then she moved on. Around them, the air seemed to shift. One man folded his newspaper slower than before. A woman across the aisle whispered something into her phone. The tension wasn't just racial. It was systemic, rehearsed, efficient. Marcus Reed had spent decades dismantling that kind of machinery. But here, in this narrow silver tube of polite cruelty, he let it run. He wanted to see how far it would go before someone remembered what humanity felt like. He wasn't angry. He was collecting data. And soon, data would speak louder than any raised voice. For now, he waited, silent as the sky itself, while injustice poured champagne 2 seats away. The hum of the engines deepened as the flight leveled at 35,000 feet, but the silence between Marcus and the crew was louder than any turbine. Nicole passed by again, avoiding his eyes, carrying trays of filet mignon and chilled white wine to everyone except him. Marcus sat motionless, the faint reflection of the cabin lights glinting off his untouched glass of water. In the seat ahead, the older man who had chuckled earlier leaned to his wife and whispered, "You see? They are letting anyone up here now." She gave a thin, embarrassed smile, but did not correct him. That was the thing about prejudice. It often hid behind politeness. Marcus leaned slightly toward the aisle. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "May I have the menu again? I believe I was skipped." Nicole stopped, glanced at him like he was interrupting a conversation he was never meant to join. "Sir," she said with a practiced smile, "you have to understand that our premium meal options are reserved for verified platinum passengers." Marcus blinked slowly. "Verified," he repeated, letting the word hang in the air. She nodded, eager to move on. "Exactly." He exhaled quietly, almost amused. "You might want to check again." She turned away without a word, and the sting in the air sharpened. A few passengers shifted in their seats, pretending not to notice. Across the aisle, Jenna, the trainee, clutched her service tablet like a secret. Her screen still displayed the manifest, and she could see his name highlighted in gold. She swallowed hard, then whispered to her supervisor. "He is on the verified list," Jenna said softly. "Seat 2B, priority status." The supervisor, a tall man named Brian, gave a condescending smirk. "Then the system must have glitched. Happens all the time." Jenna frowned. "But what if it didn't?" Brian shot her a look that froze her mid-sentence. "You are new here. Watch and learn." He turned back to Nicole and muttered under his breath, "Let the wannabe stew in it." Marcus heard that. Of course he did. Decades in boardrooms had trained his ears to catch whispers sharper than knives. He took a slow sip of water, then looked out at the endless black sky, calm as a storm waiting to happen. The same look he had 20 years ago, standing outside a dealership that refused to sell him his own company car because they said his credit must be fake. Different altitude, same ignorance. Nicole approached again, this time with a tray for the Bennetts in 2A, the couple sipping champagne like royalty. "Is everything all right here?" asked Mrs. Bennett, her tone a little too casual, a little too curious. Nicole smiled. "Everything is under control, ma'am." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Control," he said quietly, his voice steady. Interesting choice of word. Nicole hesitated, caught off guard by his composure. For a moment, she almost apologized. Almost. Then Brian's voice came over the intercom. "Cabin crew, prepare for premium dessert service." The announcement was routine, but the way he emphasized premium made it sting. Jenna bit her lip, whispering to herself, "This is wrong." When Nicole passed by again, Marcus's phone buzzed silently on his lap. A message appeared from Rachel, his executive assistant. "Board monitoring system confirms live flight feed activated. Proceed at your discretion." Marcus typed a single reply, "Wait." He looked up and saw Jenna glancing nervously in his direction. Their eyes met for a second, and she looked away quickly, as if eye contact might get her fired. Marcus leaned back, whispering to himself, "You will learn, Jenna. We all do." The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the flight entered night cruise mode. The sky outside was a sheet of quiet darkness. Marcus's reflection in the window stared back, steady, patient, and far too familiar with this game. Nicole whispered to Brian at the galley door, "He keeps watching me." Brian shrugged. "Then maybe he should go back to coach where he belongs." That line was loud enough for 3 passengers to hear, and one of them, a middle-aged woman with red hair in seat 3A, put down her magazine. "Excuse me," she said to no one in particular, but that did not sound very professional. Nicole stiffened. "Ma'am, please mind your own." But she stopped, seeing Marcus still sitting calmly, his hands folded. He was not angry. He was documenting, in his mind, every word, every tone, every look. That was his strength. Not rage. Memory. He turned to Nicole, voice measured and soft. "When you look at me, what do you see?" She frowned, uncertain if it was a trick question. "A passenger," she said carefully. Marcus nodded. "Then treat me like one." For the first time, the room's temperature seemed to drop. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Jenna stood frozen near the galley, heart pounding. And Marcus, still calm, placed his phone on the tray table, its camera quietly blinking red, the truth recording itself, mile by mile above the clouds. The cabin lights brightened slightly as turbulence rocked the plane, but it was not the sky that trembled. It was the mood. Nicole moved briskly down the aisle, tray in hand, ignoring the quiet tension that had begun to coil around seat 2B. Marcus Reed remained still, eyes steady on his phone, camera light faintly glowing red. The footage was not for revenge. It was for truth, for proof, for the pattern that had repeated itself across boardrooms, banks, hotels, and now 35,000 feet in the air. Brian, the senior attendant, leaned over Nicole's shoulder and muttered, "You have got to stop letting him get to you." Nicole whispered back, "He is recording." Brian smirked. "Then let him. People like that always think they can scare us with their little cameras." That word, people like that, landed heavier than the turbulence. Marcus heard it. Of course he did, but he did not react. He simply folded his hands and waited. Across the aisle, Jenna's fingers trembled over her service tablet. She could see the passenger log. Marcus Reed, verified platinum, shareholder status, internal note, corporate executive access. Her throat tightened. This was not just a passenger. This was someone who owned part of what she worked for. And her team was humiliating him. She looked at Brian, then at Nicole, and said quietly, "This is wrong." Brian turned on her with a cold grin. "You are dismissed from this section. Go help an economy." "But, now," he snapped, and the word cracked through the cabin like a whip. Marcus turned his head slowly toward Jenna, his tone calm, reassuring. "It is all right," he said softly. "Do what he said. For now." Jenna hesitated, then stepped away, shame burning behind her eyes. The older couple in 2A exchanged glances, uneasy but silent. The woman finally whispered, "Maybe we should not get involved." Her husband shook his head, staring at his champagne glass. "It is not our problem." Marcus watched them both. That sentence, he thought, is how injustice survives. Nicole returned to his row holding a dessert tray. Without looking at him, she reached across his seat to collect an empty glass from the aisle passenger behind him. Her bracelet brushed his shoulder. She pulled back sharply, muttering, "Please do not touch the crew." The audacity of it turned heads nearby. Marcus looked up slowly. "I did not," he said evenly, his voice calm but powerful in its restraint. "You did." Nicole's cheeks flushed pink, but she forced a laugh. "Sir, I am asking you to remain polite." The irony nearly drew applause from the silent witnesses watching her perform professionalism. Marcus exhaled once, a controlled release of decades of déjà vu. Then he reached for his phone and tapped once. On the other end, Rachel answered instantly. "Yes, Mr. Reed." "Rachel," he said, his voice low, measured. "Initiate internal review protocol. Flight number 278, Horizon Air. Mark this as a verified escalation." "Confirmed," Rachel replied. "Do you want me to inform corporate ethics?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "I want them to show me who they are without a script." Rachel's voice softened. "Understood." The call ended, but the sound of authority lingered in the air. Brian walked past, pausing near Marcus's seat. "You are not allowed to record the crew, sir," he said firmly. "It violates FAA policy." Marcus looked up, the faintest hint of a smile on his face. "I am not recording the crew," he replied. "I am recording myself. That is perfectly legal." Brian's jaw tightened. "We will see about that." He turned toward the galley, whispering to Nicole, "I will have the captain deal with him. He can sit the rest of this flight hungry." Nicole smirked. "He probably cannot afford first class anyway." The sentence cut through the air like shrapnel. Marcus turned his head toward the window, not out of defeat, but to give them a chance to recognize what they had just said. They did not. The woman in 3A who had spoken earlier finally stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I heard what you just said, and that was racist." The cabin froze. Nicole spun around, eyes wide. "Ma'am, please sit down, or I will have to report you for interfering." "Interfering?" the woman said. "You are the one insulting passengers." Marcus turned toward her and said softly, "Thank you, but it is all right." She shook her head. "No, it is not." Her courage filled the air where others' silence had lived. Brian returned with forced composure. "Sir, the captain has been informed. He will speak with you shortly." Marcus nodded calmly. "Good. I will speak with him too." He opened his phone again and typed a single line to Rachel. "Prepare board access." Outside, the plane glided through clouds like a slow blade through mist, but inside, the air was charged, alive, on the edge of revelation. Every look, Every whisper, every refusal was being etched into history. And Marcus Reed, silent and steady, was letting the system write its own indictment. The captain's door opened with a quiet click, and the entire cabin seemed to inhale. Captain Daniel Pierce stepped out, his uniform pressed to perfection, gold wings glinting under the overhead light. His face carried the calm arrogance of authority, the kind that expected compliance, not conversation. He looked directly at Marcus and said, "Sir, I am Captain Pierce. My crew informs me you have been disruptive." Marcus did not move. "Disruptive," he repeated softly, as if tasting the word. "That is an interesting description for silence." Daniel frowned, shifting his stance. "You have been recording my staff and refusing to follow service protocol. We cannot allow behavior like that in first class." "Your staff refused me a meal I paid for," Marcus said, his tone level, not pleading, not angry, just factual. "They insulted me, called me people like that, and laughed about whether I belonged here. Tell me, Captain, which part of that is service protocol?" The question hung between them like a blade. Passengers turned their heads, pretending to read magazines, but listening with the full weight of their attention. Nicole crossed her arms, whispering to Brian, "He is playing the victim." The captain glanced at her, then back to Marcus. "Sir, if you continue to create a disturbance, we will have to ask you to move to economy." The entire cabin froze. The words were not loud, but they landed with the gravity of insult layered over insult. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "Move me," he said quietly. "But you might want to confirm whose seat this really is before you do." The captain's jaw tightened. "Are you threatening my crew?" "No," Marcus replied evenly. "I am reminding you to be sure of your facts." The tension was electric. Jenna, standing near the galley, finally stepped forward despite the fear in her chest. "Captain," she said, her voice small but steady, "Mr. Reed is on the verified manifest. Seat 2B, priority shareholder access. He is not just a passenger." Nicole hissed, "Jenna, stay out of this." But the words came too late. The truth had cracked the silence wide open. The captain turned sharply to Jenna. "That information is confidential. You should not be sharing it." She swallowed hard. "With respect, sir, I think it is relevant." "Not to you," he snapped, and the authority in his tone made her flinch. Marcus spoke again, calm but commanding. "She is right. It is relevant." He picked up his phone, tapped once, and said, "Rachel, open direct line to Horizon Board Oversight. Voice authorization, Reed, Marcus J." A faint chime confirmed connection. Rachel's voice came through the speaker, clear and professional. "Live board access confirmed. Proceed when ready." The captain blinked. "What is this?" Marcus looked up at him. "Transparency," he said simply. "Something your crew seems to have misplaced." Nicole laughed nervously, trying to regain control. "You cannot be serious. You are just recording for social media clout. People do this all the time." Marcus's tone stayed flat. "Do they also own the airline?" The question stunned her. Brian stepped forward quickly, voice sharp. "You expect us to believe that?" Marcus's gaze did not waver. "I do not expect belief," he said. "I expect accountability." For the first time, Nicole's facade cracked. She looked at Brian, searching for backup, but he had gone pale. Jenna stood silently by, her eyes flicking between Marcus and the captain. The passengers were no longer pretending to read. Every eye was watching, every ear waiting. Rachel's voice echoed again through the phone. "Mr. Reed, board oversight is listening. All audio from this flight has been synced. Do you wish to escalate?" Marcus's reply came slow, deliberate. "Not yet. Let us see if humanity can fix what hierarchy broke." The captain's confidence faltered. "If you are who you say you are," he said cautiously, "why not prove it now?" Marcus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried more warning than warmth. "Because, Captain, sometimes the lesson is more valuable than the proof." A soft murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "He owns the airline." Another voice answered, "No way." The truth was beginning to breathe. Nicole stepped back, trying to compose herself, but her voice trembled. "This is getting out of hand." Marcus's tone turned colder. It got out of hand when professionalism turned into prejudice. The captain looked down at him, realizing the balance of power had shifted, not through shouting, but through quiet authority. Marcus lifted his phone slightly and said, "Rachel, log this timestamp." Beginning of live escalation sequence. Logged, Rachel replied. Do you wish to proceed with incident report initiation? Marcus looked around. The cabin, at the fearful faces, the guilty glances, the one young woman who had spoken truth against silence, and said, yes. Begin protocol. Outside, lightning flickered in distant clouds, white against the darkness. Inside, the hierarchy of the cabin was about to be rewritten. The sound of the engines deepened, vibrating through the cabin like a slow heartbeat. Outside, the clouds stretched endless and silent, but inside the air was thick with tension. Captain Daniel Pierce stood still, uncertain for the first time in his career. Marcus Reed remained calm, hands folded on the armrest, eyes steady as if he were studying the weather rather than the faces around him. Rachel's voice came through the phone again, smooth and measured. Mr. Reed, live recording has been verified. The board confirms your authority to continue escalation protocol at your discretion. The captain frowned. What board are we talking about? Marcus met his gaze. The one that signs your paychecks. The words fell heavy, almost whispered, but they landed like thunder. Nicole stepped back, her practiced smile fading into disbelief. You cannot be serious, she said. You are saying you are with Horizon Corporate? Marcus turned his head slightly. No, I am Horizon Corporate. A ripple of shock passed through the cabin. The older man in 2A dropped his champagne glass. It rolled across the aisle, clinking softly against Marcus's shoe. The sound was small but symbolic, like the moment arrogance meets consequence. Marcus leaned forward, voice even, deliberate. Captain Pierce, your crew has violated the passenger dignity clause outlined in Horizon's operational ethics policy. That clause exists because I wrote it. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed again. He had no script for this. Rachel's voice returned, crisp as paper. Mr. Reed, per escalation rules, you may proceed to issue temporary suspensions pending review. Marcus nodded slightly. Not yet, he said. Let them speak first. Nicole glanced around, realizing that every eye in first class was on her. She swallowed hard. Sir, I did not mean to offend. We have had counterfeit ticket cases before. I was only following protocol. Marcus tilted his head. Protocol does not excuse bias. It was not bias, she said quickly, her voice cracking on the word. It was assumption, Marcus interrupted, finishing the sentence for her. And assumption is the cousin of discrimination. The cabin was silent except for the hum of altitude. Brian shifted his stance and muttered, This is ridiculous. Nobody treats anyone differently because of race. Marcus looked at him, his calm cutting sharper than anger. You laughed when your colleague skipped my meal. You call me people like that. Tell me, what exactly does like that mean to you? Brian froze. His lips parted, but no sound came out. That is what I thought, Marcus said quietly. It means you already decided who I was before I said a single word. Nicole's eyes glistened with panic. Please, sir, do not ruin my career over a misunderstanding. Marcus's tone softened, but not with sympathy, with truth. You ruined your own career when you forgot that every person who walks on this plane deserves respect, not a profile check. The woman in 3A, who had spoken earlier, nodded slowly. Amen to that, she said under her breath, and a few others murmured in agreement. Captain Pierce exhaled heavily. Mr. Reed, what do you want from us right now? Marcus turned his gaze to the window where lightning flashed faintly in the distance. Accountability, he said. That is all I ever want. He picked up his phone again. Rachel, timestamp this. Cabin level escalation verified. Begin phase 2. Confirmed, Rachel replied. Authority transferred to your live control. Corporate oversight is listening. The captain straightened his shoulders, his voice tight. Sir, with respect, this is highly irregular. Marcus looked up at him calmly. So is being humiliated in your own company. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Jenna stepped forward again, her voice trembling but resolute. Captain, I heard everything. He never raised his voice. He just asked for the same service as everyone else. We failed him. Nicole turned on her sharply. You do not speak for the crew. Jenna did not back down. No, I speak for myself. Her voice grew stronger. And I am tired of pretending that silence makes me professional. It just makes me complicit. The captain rubbed a hand over his face, the weight of the situation pressing down like gravity. Marcus stood slowly, his presence filling the narrow space with quiet authority. Jenna, he said. You just proved what integrity looks like. Remember that. She nodded, tears catching the light. Marcus turned toward Nicole and Brian. You both had the chance to treat a stranger with dignity. Instead, you treated an owner like a problem. And now you are discovering what happens when arrogance forgets its audience. He lifted his phone once more. Rachel, initiate immediate suspension for flight crew members Nicole Harris and Brian Foster, pending investigation. Rachel's voice replied, clear and final. Confirmed. Access revoked. Compliance team notified. Nicole's badge blinked red on her uniform, its light dimming like a dying ember. Brian looked down at his tablet, the screen flashing access denied. Gasps filled the cabin. Marcus sat back down, calm as ever. This is not punishment, he said softly. This is correction. For the next generation watching. Jenna's voice broke the silence. Thank you, sir. Marcus glanced at her. Do not thank me, he said. Thank yourself for speaking when it mattered. Outside, the lightning faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the engines and a sense that something far greater than altitude had shifted forever. The cabin had fallen into a heavy, fragile quiet, the kind that comes right after a storm, but before people realize they are standing in the wreckage. Nicole's badge continued to blink red, its soft pulsing light reflecting against the window like a warning. Brian stared at his tablet, frozen, the words, access revoked, flashing in cold white letters across the screen. Captain Pierce stood motionless at the aisle, torn between authority and disbelief. Marcus Reed had not raised his voice once, yet the entire hierarchy of the flight had just been rewritten by calm truth. Rachel's voice sounded again through the phone, now on speaker, so everyone could hear. Corporate has acknowledged your directive, Mr. Reed. Temporary suspensions have been processed, and compliance oversight is active. Do you wish to proceed with the live debrief? Marcus looked up slowly, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the passengers, some guilty, some stunned, some quietly inspired. Yes, he said finally. Let them see what accountability looks like at 35,000 feet. Rachel confirmed softly, proceeding now. You have the floor. Marcus turned his eyes toward Captain Pierce, his tone measured but direct. Captain, you represent command on this aircraft, but command without empathy is just control. You allowed prejudice to masquerade as policy on your watch. I am not asking you to apologize to me. I am asking you to recognize what that silence cost you. The captain's face tightened. His pride fought against the weight of truth pressing down on him. You are right, Mr. Reed, he said quietly. I failed to step in when I should have. His voice faltered. It will not happen again. Marcus nodded once. See that it does not. He then turned his attention to the rest of the cabin crew members who had gathered nervously near the galley, whispering to one another. This flight was supposed to represent the best of Horizon Air, Marcus said, his tone neither cruel nor forgiving. Instead, it showed what happens when respect becomes selective. Nicole's voice cracked. Sir, please, I have a family. I cannot lose this job. Marcus regarded her with the steady calm of someone who had heard that plea before, too many times, in too many rooms, from people who never stopped to think how many families were hurt by their bias. Then I hope, he said slowly, that this becomes the lesson you teach them about the cost of judgment. The woman in seat 3A spoke again, louder this time. This is what happens when people in power stay silent, she said. Her tone was angry but laced with admiration. You handled this better than I ever could have. Marcus gave her a small nod. Anger can light a fire, he said. But discipline builds a torch. Rachel's voice came back over the line. Mr. Reed, corporate has requested confirmation for your next action. Do you want to authorize an immediate compliance review of the captain's report and passenger witness statements? Marcus glanced toward Jenna, who was standing near the rear of the cabin, her hands clasped tightly together. No, he said. I want her to take it. Jenna blinked. Sir, you heard me, Marcus said. You are the only one who stood up when everyone else looked away. You will lead the in-flight report, effective now. Captain Pierce looked up sharply. She is a trainee. Marcus's voice carried quiet finality. Not anymore. Jenna's eyes widened. Sir, I do not know what to say. Marcus smiled faintly. Start with the truth. It is the one thing that never needs permission. Rachel spoke again, pride clear in her tone. Appointment logged and verified, Mr. Reed. Ms. Jenna Morales is now temporary acting flight supervisor for this cabin. A murmur of disbelief spread through the passengers. Brian muttered under his breath, "You cannot just promote someone mid-flight." Marcus looked at him, his expression unreadable. "You are right," he said. "Normally, you cannot. But then again, you cannot insult your company's owner either, and yet here we are." Brian's mouth closed. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken awe. Jenna stepped forward, standing a little taller now. "Passengers," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "On behalf of Horizon Air, I apologize for what you witnessed today. This is not who we are, but it is a reminder of who we must never be again." The cabin erupted in quiet applause. Nothing loud, nothing performative, just the sound of shared release. Marcus let it linger, then added softly, "You see, dignity does not demand volume. It demands presence." Rachel's voice, softer now, said, "Corporate just sent word, Mr. Reed. News outlets have picked up a passenger post from this flight. You are trending online. Do you wish to release a statement?" Marcus shook his head slowly, his voice calm but weighted. "No. The world will write its headlines. I will write the policy." He looked once more at the crew, then at the passengers. "We are not done. When this flight lands, there will be reform. But for now, we will finish this journey the right way." Captain Pierce took a steady breath and nodded respectfully. "Understood, sir." Marcus leaned back in his seat, eyes fixed on the fading glow of sunset through the window. For the first time since the flight began, the sky seemed calm again, and so did he. The lesson had been delivered. The altitude was steady. And for once, so was justice. The seatbelt sign flickered on, casting a dim amber glow across the cabin as the plane began its slow descent toward Los Angeles. The sky outside had turned a deep violet, streaked with orange like fading embers. Inside, the atmosphere was charged, not with fear, but with the quiet electricity of realization. For the first time since takeoff, every person aboard understood who they were sitting with. Marcus Reed remained seated in 2B, posture calm, eyes fixed forward. The storm had passed, but the aftermath was still unfolding. Rachel's voice came softly through his phone again, steady and professional. "Mr. Reed, corporate has confirmed media interest in the incident. Several passenger videos are already circulating. Do you wish to comment?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "No press. No statements. Not yet. Let the truth breathe first." "Understood," Rachel replied. "Board oversight has requested a follow-up briefing once you land. They also approved your promotion." "For the trainee." Marcus smiled faintly. "Good. Let them know leadership just got a lot younger and a lot braver." He ended the call and turned toward Jenna, who stood near the galley with a clipboard trembling slightly in her hands. "How are you holding up?" he asked. She blinked, caught off guard. I'm just trying to do the right thing." "Then you are already ahead of most people in management," Marcus said, his tone warm but firm. She smiled nervously, the kind of smile that comes when fear begins turning into pride. Across the aisle, Nicole sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Her badge still glowed red, a small, blinking reminder of consequences earned. Brian stared out the window, the reflection of the cabin lights painting guilt across his face. The captain approached Marcus again, this time without the shield of authority in his posture. "Mr. Reed," he said, his tone low but sincere. "I spoke with the control tower. Corporate has already contacted us midair. They confirmed everything you said." Marcus nodded once. "Then you understand what happens next." Daniel hesitated. "Yes, sir. I do. This does not have to end your career," Marcus said. "But it should change it. Every time you walk into a cockpit, remember this. People trust you with their lives, not just their luggage." The captain's jaw tightened, emotion flickering through the facade of professionalism. "Yes, sir." He turned to Jenna. "Miss Morales, as acting flight supervisor, please oversee final service and prepare the report." Jenna straightened. "Yes, Captain." The moment felt symbolic, a transfer of conscience in midair. Marcus leaned back and let the sound of the engines fill the silence. Around him, the passengers watched with quiet reverence. The woman from seat 3A leaned over the aisle. "Mr. Reed," she whispered, "I have traveled all over the world, and I have never seen anything like this. You did not raise your voice once, and somehow everyone listened." Marcus turned to her, his expression soft but unwavering. Sometimes silence speaks louder when it stands on truth. The woman smiled faintly, tears glinting in her eyes. You changed something tonight. Marcus shook his head. We all did. Even those who made the mistake. Change does not start with applause. It starts with accountability. A few rows back, a young man lifted his phone slightly, recording once more. This time it was not for outrage. It was for memory. He whispered. He just said, change starts with accountability. Others nodded. The tension that once divided the cabin now felt like unity built from realization. Nicole finally spoke, her voice cracking through the hum. Mr. Reed, I am sorry. I really am. I thought I was protecting the airline. I never imagined I was disrespecting the person who built it. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Apologies are a start, he said. But growth is the destination. What matters is what you do after this flight lands. She nodded slowly, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. Brian said nothing, but his silence carried the weight of regret. Rachel's voice returned over the phone, a final update. Mr. Reed, the board confirms compliance will be waiting at the gate. Local news outlets are requesting official statements. Would you like us to prepare your remarks? Marcus's voice was steady, grounded. Yes, he said. Begin with this line. No passenger should have to prove their worth to be treated with respect. Rachel paused. Beautiful, she said quietly. I will make sure that is the headline. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for landing, please make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in the upright position. But even as he spoke, everyone knew this flight would not be remembered for its destination. It would be remembered for what it revealed. Marcus glanced once more toward Jenna. You did well, he said. Thank you for not looking away. She smiled through tears. Thank you for showing me why I should not. As the city lights of Los Angeles began to appear through the clouds, the cabin grew quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence this time. Not fear, not tension, respect. The plane descended through the soft glow of night, carrying not just its passengers, but a message that would echo far beyond the runway. That dignity, once defended, does not descend, it ascends. The wheels touched down on the runway with a soft thud, the kind that usually signaled relief at the end of a long flight. But this landing carried a different kind of gravity. It was not just an arrival, it was a reckoning. The cabin lights flickered back to full brightness, and for the first time, nobody reached for their bags. The passengers stayed still, watching the man in seat 2B who had just turned a routine flight into a lesson in power and principle. Marcus Reed sat quietly, the glow of his phone dimmed, his reflection staring back at him from the darkened window. Outside, the lights of Los Angeles stretched endlessly, like a city waiting to witness what justice looked like when it finally came down to earth. The intercom crackled. Captain Pierce's voice came through, steadier than before. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles International Airport. On behalf of Horizon Air, we thank you for flying with us this evening. Please remain seated until the aircraft has come to a complete stop. But everyone knew this was not just another routine announcement. His tone carried something new, humility. As the plane taxied toward the gate, Rachel's voice returned in Marcus's earpiece, quiet but composed. Mr. Reed, compliance and media relations are both waiting at the arrival gate. The board has also requested an immediate debrief once you disembark. Marcus nodded slowly. Understood. Make sure Jenna is included in that meeting. Rachel paused for a second, then replied, Yes, sir. It is already arranged. Across the aisle, Jenna glanced over at him nervously. She was still standing tall, clipboard in hand, her trainee badge replaced by a temporary supervisor tag printed mid-flight by Rachel's order. Marcus smiled faintly. Remember what I told you, he said. Integrity does not need permission. Jenna nodded, her eyes bright with both pride and disbelief. The plane came to a stop, and the familiar ding of the seatbelt sign went off. But no one moved. The passengers waited, as if they understood instinctively that they were part of something larger than travel. Then, the cabin door opened with a hiss, and two Horizon executives stepped inside, one from compliance, the other from public relations. Their expressions were respectful, tense, and visibly aware of who they were addressing. Mr. Reed, the compliance director said, his voice careful, we are here to escort you to the terminal for the debrief. We will also be taking statements from the passengers and remaining crew. Marcus stood slowly, adjusting his jacket. Make sure the process is fair, he said. No scapegoats. Everyone will answer for their choices, good or bad. The man nodded quickly. Of course, sir. The passengers began to rise, not to leave, but to show respect. The woman, from 3A, stepped forward and extended her hand. Mr. Reed, thank you, she said. You reminded us that silence helps no one. Marcus shook her hand gently. Silence is the oldest accomplice of injustice, he said. It is time we stop working with it. Around them, murmurs of agreement spread through the cabin. A man in 4C added quietly, You gave us back our humanity tonight. Nicole, still seated, looked up at him with tearful eyes. Mr. Reed, please, if there is any way I can fix this. Marcus regarded her with that same steady calm. You start by admitting it happened, he said. You cannot change what you deny. She nodded, tears falling freely now. I will. Brian remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. The compliance officer approached him, hand extended toward his tablet. Mr. Foster, please surrender your company device. Brian hesitated, then handed it over wordlessly. The red light on his badge faded out completely. Jenna took a step closer to Marcus as they prepared to exit. Sir, she said softly, they are all recording. This story is going to spread everywhere. Marcus gave a small smile. Good, he replied, because lessons should not stay confined to one cabin. As he stepped into the jet bridge, the air felt different, cooler, cleaner, as if the plane itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Reporters stood beyond the glass wall of the terminal, flashes beginning to flicker as words spread through the airport. A few passengers followed behind him, not out of curiosity, but out of quiet solidarity. The captain stopped him briefly at the exit. Mr. Reed, he said, I cannot undo what happened tonight, but I will make sure it never happens again on any flight I command. Marcus studied him for a moment and then extended his hand. That is how redemption begins, he said. With commitment, not comfort. They shook hands firmly. Then Marcus turned, walking into the terminal where cameras waited, but he did not slow his stride. This was not about spectacle, it was about standard. Behind him, the plane door closed, sealing a chapter in silence. Ahead of him, the world waited, ready to hear what accountability sounded like when spoken without anger. And for Marcus Reed, the man once denied a simple meal in first class. The next step was not vengeance, it was reform. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass facade of Horizon Air's headquarters, casting long gold reflections across the marble lobby. It was the same kind of lobby where Marcus Reed had been dismissed so many times in his life, but this time, it was different. The air buzzed with quiet tension. Every employee knew what had happened on Flight 278. Screens in the reception area showed news headlines from across the country. Black CEO denied meal in first class. Reforms already underway. Silence speaks louder than shouts. Marcus Reed responds to discrimination with action. Marcus stepped through the doors without security escorts or assistance. His presence alone drew every eye. Conversation stopped. The click of his shoes echoed in the vast space, steady and deliberate. He carried no anger, no theatrics, only purpose. Rachel met him by the elevator, tablet in hand. The board is assembled, she said. Media requests are backed up for the next 24 hours. And Jenna Morales is waiting upstairs. Marcus gave a small nod. Good. Let her speak first. The elevator doors slid open, and as they rose to the top floor, the city below began to shrink, just as the small-mindedness he had faced was about to. When the doors opened, the full Horizon boardroom awaited him. 12 executives, silent, cautious, standing as he entered. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, he said carefully, we reviewed the flight footage. It is damning. Marcus looked around the room, reading their discomfort like a book. It is not damning, he said quietly. It is clarifying. The chairman shifted in his seat. The incident is already viral. We are trending on every network. We need to manage the damage. Marcus's expression did not change. The only thing that needs managing is our conscience. He placed his phone on the table, and Rachel tapped a key on her tablet. A live feed appeared on the wall screen. Passenger testimonies recorded after landing. The woman from seat 3A was speaking. He did not yell. He did not threaten. He simply reminded everyone what respect should look like. Another voice followed, a man saying, I watched a leader handle prejudice with grace, not fury. That is power. Marcus looked at the board members one by one. These people are not just our customers. They are our mirror. And yesterday, that mirror showed us exactly who we have become. Silence filled the room. Rachel broke it gently. Compliance confirmed both suspensions are effective. Captain Pierce has submitted an apology letter and requested retraining for his entire team. Nicole Harris and Brian Foster's contracts are pending review. Marcus nodded. Retraining is not enough. We need restructuring, starting with policy. He turned to Jenna, who sat quietly at the far end of the table, still wearing the trainee badge that had now become a symbol. Miss Morales, tell them what you saw. Jenna swallowed hard, then stood. Her voice trembled at first, but the truth steadied it. I saw a man be treated like a problem because he did not look like what people expected of success. I saw others stay silent because it was easier, and I saw what happened when one person refused to let silence win. Her eyes lifted. If we want Horizon to stand for something, it has to start with who we are when nobody's watching. The room was still. Marcus smiled faintly. That, he said, is leadership. He turned back to the board. Effective immediately, Horizon Air will implement a zero-tolerance protocol for in-flight discrimination. Every employee, from cabin crew to executive, will undergo mandatory empathy and equity training. And there will be no grandfather clauses. Everyone starts fresh. The chairman hesitated. Marcus, do you think this will fix what happened? Marcus's eyes met his. No, he said simply. But it will stop it from happening again. Rachel looked up from her tablet. Sir, the press is waiting downstairs. They are asking for your statement. Marcus took a breath, then spoke slowly, every word deliberate. Tell them this. I did not fire anyone out of anger. I held people accountable out of necessity. I did not raise my voice. I raised the standard. And Horizon Air will never fly at the cost of human dignity again. Rachel nodded, typing quickly. Message approved and distributed. The board members stood, applause quiet but genuine. Marcus turned to Jenna. You will assist Rachel with the rollout, he said. I want you to oversee the first training session personally. Jenna's eyes widened. Me? You earned it, Marcus said. You spoke truth when it mattered most. As the meeting ended, Marcus walked to the window. The city spread wide beneath him. Airplanes glided across the horizon, small silver streaks cutting through the morning light. For a moment, he remembered the sting of being denied a meal. A reminder that prejudice rarely begins loud, but it always ends exposed. He spoke softly, almost to himself. We fly higher not by altitude, but by attitude. Behind him, Rachel smiled. That will be your next quote on the wall downstairs. Marcus turned, his gaze calm and resolute. Make sure it is carved deep enough to last. As he left the boardroom, the sunlight caught the Horizon Air logo on the wall. Its reflection followed him down the hall, steady and unwavering, just like the man who had turned humiliation into reform and silence into justice.